Welcome to the Modern Husbands podcast, where any combination of Dr. Bruce Ross, Kristen Sherrill, and Brian Page host national experts who share winning ideas to manage money in the home as a team. Today, we welcome Feraud Calixte. He's an attorney and CFP, currently working as a senior financial advisor at Madeira Wealth Management. He is a National Association of Personal Financial Advisors national board member, a fee-only Network Society of Financial Service Professionals member, and an Investment News 40 Under 40 emerging leader. Mr. Calixte has been quoted by various publications such as the U.S. News & World Report, Yahoo Finance Investment News, and NAPFA Advisor. On today's episode, we discuss how the common challenges couples encounter when planning for retirement together can be addressed among other essential topics to help married couples realize their retirement dreams.
All right. Hey, Feraud. Thanks so much for being with us today on our podcast.
Happy to be here, Bruce.
Let's just get right into it. I think this is such an important topic for today, right? Planning for retirement, especially for married couples. So before we get into any of the nitty-gritty stuff, I think it's important for our listeners to know whether or not their financial planner is putting their interest ahead of their own. How can they do that?
Yeah, so that's a very important question. So one of the things that we always ask prospective people to think about when they're interviewing a financial planner, and that's essentially what it is. You're interviewing your financial planner. So there's a couple of questions that I like to tell folks to ask for. First of all, look up, do your due diligence, research the person before you actually have the conversation. So on their website, you're going to be looking for things like compensation structure, so fee only versus fee based. Those are kind of industry terms that a lot of people throw around, but they're important. They matter to the consumer, and I'm going to get into why. There's also, how do they advise clients? Meaning that, are they financial planning first? Do they lead with financial planning? So that's something that you're going to want to also glean from taking a look at their website. And then there's the big word, legal word, fiduciary, that you're going to want to see at some point there. So fiduciary just means putting your best interest first, solely as the client. So, when you go and speak to the advisor, the prospective person that you're hiring, you're going to ask them, how do you work with clients? What are your typical clients? How are you compensated? Those are the kind of questions that you're going to ask to find out if their interests truly align with yours, because that's really what you're trying to figure out, that they're putting your interest as the client before their own.
So that fiduciary term, that's one of the key things, right? And so
Yeah.
should we just straight up ask, are you a fiduciary?
Yeah, you can, but I always think it's interesting when you just ask that, because everybody kind of thinks they are a fiduciary. So that it's sometimes it's not just that simple.
Okay.
You want to look at, sometimes there's associations that you belong to. First of all, the National Association of Personal Financial Advisors, NAPFA. You can look at a minimum, you want that person to have a CFP, certified financial planner. You want to see those kind of signaling cues there. And then I think it's conversational, because if you just flat out just ask, are you a fiduciary, you hope that the person will understand and answer that question honestly.
If they start doing like a cartoonish eyes looking back and forth.
Yeah. I think that's a signal.
Yeah, I'm a fiduciary for sure.
Yeah.
Now,
So,
I want to do a real quick follow up for Feraud. Can you perhaps explain why that's important? Like, are there certain products where financial planners receive like kickbacks or higher commissions to push than others?
Yeah. So the reason why it's important to, and look, I want to preface this by saying it's not, there are good people on either side of the business spectrum. This is all about how you get paid. So it's not just labeling of practitioners in a negative light, but
Mhm.
from a consumer, it's just about giving you all the information so you can make an informed decision. That's all it is. So in terms of products, typically insurance products, they're sold at a broker relationship. You're brokering a product and you earn a commission as the representative. When you work for a certain investment house, sometimes they have proprietary products that as the representative you sell, you will earn a commission. So I think for a lot of consumers, they just want to know that, look, your vested interest, the thing that you're most concerned about is what's in it for me, the consumer. So that's kind of how when certain things get unclear when you're dealing with product sales, commissions, incentives, different things like that.
The reason I brought that up is because for most people, they see fee only, and they see, whatever that cost is. Let's say I'm going to throw out a number. Let's say it's $2,000, $3,000. They think to themselves, oh my goodness, that's so much money. But when you look at how a lot of financial planners will charge to manage money, it's what's called assets under management. So for our listeners, I just want to put something in perspective. Let's pretend that you decide to meet with a financial planner who does not have to adhere to the fiduciary standard, so they can sell you something suitable for you, but not necessarily in their best interest. So you get kind of a high fee mutual fund, and between all the fees, you pay 1.5%. You might think to yourself, hey, 1.5% isn't very much. So you're investing 10 grand a year for 30 years, 1.5%. You will have, before fees, after 30 years, assuming the market average of 8% inflation adjusted, just over 1.2 million before fees. However, that 1.5%, that compounds too. You'll pay $307,000 in fees. So almost a third of your retirement will go to fees, or it has been feed. So that 1.5% isn't, it's misleading, right? You're paying 1.5% on really what the earnings are. So I just want to make sure people know that just even 1% or 1.5%, that adds up to hundreds of thousands of dollars over time.
You mentioned earlier this broker relationship with respect to insurance products, and that's something that you're starting to see, and we're starting to see this, all over social media. You've got influencers pitching, 401ks are a scam, and you should invest in IULs and whole life, cash value life insurance policies. What are these people talking about, and are they on the right track?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know what they're talking about because, I think generally speaking, for most consumers, if you're employed, 401ks are a great option. Because, depending on your employer, a lot of times there's a match that you get in there. So that's money for you. It's growing tax deferred. Usually because you're part of an employer sponsored plan, the fees are relatively low because they have scale. So there's so many participants in there. And for the most part, even when I'm reviewing employer sponsored plan, they really have some good options. So you're going to see, a lot of Vanguard, T. Rowe Price, Fidelity, low cost options there. I think that for most consumers, if you're going on into your own, there's actually target date funds. I actually don't think there's anything wrong with target date funds for most people. It's kind of a set it and forget it, kind of forced retirement, a forced savings vehicle that most people can kind of simply do. You just pick an option and it deducts from your payroll. So I think that's great. Now, as far as the other products, whole life and index universal life policies, those are both insurance products. Again, I think that there's a place for insurance as part of a sound financial plan, particularly in a risk mitigation strategy. That's why insurance was developed, to prevent certain risk. But as a primary investment tool, I'd still go to the 401k option for most consumers. That seems to be a better fit for most people.
You know,
Got it.
one of the things that we are always concerned about is that people that anybody, but you know, in particular, the people that listen to our podcast, that go to our website, that they don't understand how they can defend themselves against, you know, a wide variety of ways in which people can take advantage of them. And so when I talked to Dr. Kruger and explained to Dr. Kruger, look, we really want to hit home with this. That's Dr. Kruger's like, look, you've got to talk to Feraud Calixte, and you know, you're a part of you're a board member with the National. I want to make sure I get this right. The National Association of Personal Financial Advisors. And that is a very high, you all have a very high standard, high ethical standard, high integrity standard. Can you just, before I ask my next question, share just a little bit about what that is, so the folks that are listening understand why this type of credentialing matters?
Yeah, so and thank you for sharing that. So it's a association I'm very proud to be a part of, the National Association of Personal Financial Advisors. Try to say that 10 times fast. But NAPFA is so we're an association of a little over 4,000 members. It's a volunteer association, so these are people who are seeking to join us, and we're making that commitment, right? So we have extensive CE requirements that we have to stay on top of, certain industry standards to be a NAPFA registered advisor. You also have to adhere to our fiduciary standard of a NAPFA personal financial, of a NAPFA registered advisor. Even I get tongue tied. And you know, again, you're fee only, you're fiduciary, you do not sell products. There's an oath that we all sign and adhere to that we are going to do. We feel like this is the best way to do this business, to put ourselves on the same side as the clients, and that we really want to minimize conflicts of interest. And I use that word deliberately, minimize, because there's no such thing as a conflict free relationship, because if you're coming to me to work with me, I am interested in getting you to become a client, right? I mean, that's what we're in business for. But it's try to minimize as many conflicts as possible. So I think that I'm really proud of being part of this association. And as you said, I've volunteered on different levels, and we're continuing to grow and support the industry and really push for that fiduciary standard to be a standard that if you hold yourself out as a planner, that is the standard that you're going to adhere to.
And for me personally, my financial planner is fee only. As a member of your association, I have a really tough time thinking about the possibility of meeting with somebody who is going to earn a higher commission by selling me something that's better for them but not me, because it's human nature to want to do that, and it eliminates all of those thoughts. And I have a peace of mind knowing that when I meet with someone just like yourself, who's I know will put my interest ahead of your own, that I can take a sigh of relief and just know whatever advice you give is best for me and my family. And along those lines, one of the things that a lot of couples who now are starting to have children have to think through are estate planning. So what legal and estate planning considerations should married couples keep in mind as they prepare for retirement? So as an example, like, what are the differences between a living trust and a will? And when does a living trust make the most sense for married couples?
Yeah, so and thank you for asking that. So estate planning is it's one of the pillars of a sound financial plan, right? So that's why it all ties into all of this, because that's why the standard is so important, and working with a planning focused advisor makes sense, where it's not product sales. Because as a fee only fiduciary, I don't get compensated for advising you on a sound estate plan. right? You still have to go to an attorney. I have to work with that attorney as part of your team to establish this plan for you. But I'm literally doing that in your best interest. So just as a side, like, my wife and I, we have three small boys, 7, 5, and 2. So one of the things that when we got married and we started having kids, we started looking at that. So we're going to look at guardianship issues, wills, powers of attorney, different things like that. So those are the things that married couples, particularly with small kids, need to think about. So what happens if one of us pass away? Who cares for the children in the event that, we both pass away at the same time? What are some of the things that you can do to avoid probate? So one of the questions you asked specifically about a living trust, reason why some couples decide to opt for trust is because of the flexibility that you have, and you appoint your trustee. You can dictate how you want the trust to manage. You avoid the court probate system. Wills is, for most people, it's simple. You kind of lay out your wishes, but you still have to go to a court and deal with the probate court system there as well. But those are some of the issues that you have to think about when it's family planning, estate planning. If you're charitably inclined, what are some of your wishes that you want dictated after you pass away? I think that estate planning is one of those things, part of the financial plan. It's hard to think about. Nobody wants to think about their death. But well, we're all headed there. So one way or another, we're all headed there. So it's one of those facts of life that, if you can be intentional about it, it's actually a good way to love on the folks that you care about. Particularly if you're thinking about your kids or other family members, to get that taken care of.
And what does the process look like to set up is a living trust? Is that what the term is?
Yeah, so what we would do is so there's a couple of pieces here. So I'm not an estate planning attorney, so you would have to work with your local estate planning attorney that's licensed in your jurisdiction. But as far as the financial planning side goes, you meet with your financial planner. We assess all your assets. We listen to your goals. What is important to you, and then once we determine that we have to get your estate documents in order. For example, we facilitate a meeting with that estate planning attorney for you, help you decide on which one. We'll vet the estate planning attorney. We'll meet with them if you don't have one already. And a lot of times we offer to go sit with you in that meeting and just make sure that, everybody's just on the same page and we're really clear on the vehicles that are being, the strategy that is being advised to you fits into your overall financial plan. So to the extent that we can help make that process smoother, sometimes the estate planning attorney, they'll want an asset list, they'll want a net worth statement. We can provide that, and any good financial planner should be able to do that for you.
I work with this teacher, and I know Bruce has a question next, so I apologize for stepping on this, Bruce, but I work with this amazing teacher, Barbara Angelicola Anzoli. She, as a personal finance teacher for high school students, and she has this, I guess, tagline for her class, preparing young people for the real world, right? She says, what you're going to learn in this class is going to help you from womb to tomb. So they get into, the estate planning piece near the end of her class, and you'll make a plan, again, from womb to tomb. But the other component of this is you've got womb to tomb, but then there's another womb there, in the middle, right? And in terms of preparing, the next generation of, if you've got kids, et cetera.
Hey there, podcast fam. We'd love to hear from you. Please take this moment to rate and subscribe to our podcast. Your feedback fuels our passion to bring you more engaging content. And please text this episode to your friends. It's your support that can help us grow. Now back to the show.
So it's kind of a cool catchphrase that I think encapsulates much of what y'all are discussing. Thank you. This is absolutely eye-opening and really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I always like to think about it as I love the term like legacy planning, right?
Mm.
So you're building out these living trusts to be thinking about what your legacy is going to be. The legacy for those that you're trying to care for, that you're leaving behind, the legacy of giving to charities or nonprofits that matter to you. Like, what is your legacy that you want? And I think that helps kind of frame that conversation. Um, but there's also a lot of challenges that couples face, when they're thinking about it. You mentioned even just one of thinking about death in general, right?
Mm.
But what are some of the common challenges couples encounter when planning for retirement together?
Yeah, so one of the things that I often joke about, I wear one hat as a marriage counselor, too, when dealing with couples, because that is part of the process. Is you have two people coming together with two different money mindsets or experiences with money, and you got to come together and really work towards a common goal. That is marriage, right? Two imperfect people coming
Right.
together, and then you're trying to do this thing called life. Um, so that you always have that. So the couples I mean the challenges that happen is that, again, um timeline. When does one person, what does retirement look like? Like, when do we want to retire? What is the lifestyle that we want to live in retirement? Has one spouse primarily stayed at home for a majority of the time, and then another spouse was working? So how does that affect the financial plan? One person wants to travel the world during in retirement. Another person just doesn't want to. Then you have aging parents. One set of parents lives in this state, the other one lives in this state. How do you decide on what's going to be home base? As the kids grow, and grandkids start to come in the picture, where are we going to be? Because grandkids are living in different states.
Mm.
So that's why the financial planning process it is a process, and it's not static, because life doesn't happen in a linear line, right? So that's why most good planners have a really long relationship with their clients, because it changes and evolves as life happens. So the number of challenges that couples have in terms of planning is so varied, and but they're not things that you can't get come up with a strategy around, as long as you're working and you're communicating with your planner.
You ever seen that chart? It's like how you think life is going to go, how
Yeah.
life actually is,
Oh
and
yeah.
you got the linear or the exponential, if we're optimists, the exponential line, and then the actual line is like, well, all over the place. You couldn't even, there's no equation for what that line, what that line is. That's
Yeah.
really fascinating, thinking about how
No.
the relationship between the client and the planner, has to evolve with all those evolutions.
Mhm.
And let me just say this too. Another thing that is just a health event. Just health events in later
Mm.
ages. That is often one of those things. I mean, you definitely can't plan for that. You don't know when that's going to happen. But there's certain things like, that's when you start talking about whether you age at home or you go to an assisted living
Yeah.
facility, continuing care. There's so many different complexities that life kind of throws at you, but you try to mitigate a lot of that as much as you can.
Yeah, it reminds me. I used to do this exercise with older adults, but thinking about like what your life plan was like 5 years previously, and 5 years before that, and like sure enough, and going back, everyone's like, yeah, like 5 years ago, I did not think I was going to be here or doing this thing
Mhm.
or have this life circumstance, and like 5 years before that, completely different. 5 years before that, completely different.
Yeah.
And I think as we grow, you're absolutely right, bro. It's a process. Like life changes, it takes us in different directions. We want different things. Circumstances like our health changes. And so just to be thinking about that and going through that process, but it's a continual process is important.
Yeah, for sure.
So you mentioned kind of stepping into the, family and marriage counselor role a little bit within your role as a financial planner. What are some other resources or professional guidance that, married couples can pursue with respect to planning for retirement?
Yeah. So, and I did say that jokingly, but I do think that couples therapy and therapy that's a whole nother field, and I do think that's important. So if so that's a resource. So if there's any other issues outside of the money, you do need to see a therapist, a married um, therapist. But resources, the resources out here are plentiful. So you can, I'm actually a fan generally of just the personal finance books and resources that are out there. And I know that some planners kind of roll their eyes when they see that, oh, somebody on Twitter said this, or there's some new book coming out. But to me, it's an opportunity to educate. So many times, like clients or prospective clients will say, I read this, or I heard that, kind of like you mentioned, everybody on social media is telling you about 401ks and different insurance products. It is incumbent on the modern day planner to have a pretty good knowledge of kind of like what's being said out there, so you can educate folks on what's, just help people make sense of the abundance of information that we have access to. So the resources that people have, you can, again, you can visit NAPFA, you can go on the CFP planning website. You can,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wouldn't make life decisions based on Twitter or Facebook, but there's tons of people speaking on there. Market news you can look at. I think that however you get your information or resources, it's kind of nice to have someone trusted who you can bounce ideas off of. That's another thing that I think a good planner does for clients. That's another way they add value. Because look, I get questions all the time from clients about, hey, Feraud, I was reading this article in Morningstar. What do you think? And a lot of times it's not only deciphering that information, but uh, putting it back. How does it apply to your specific situation? Because a lot of the information we find on a public forum is just general, right? Your specific situation, there's no way somebody writing an article can speak to your specific situation, which is why it helps to have a relationship with a planner. So yeah, that's a long way to saying that there's so many resources out there. I can't even pinpoint exactly what's the best, or if you will.
Well,
Do you have a
we're
favorite?
not biased, but we would say
Yeah.
modernhusbands.com.
Well, there you go. There you go. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite personal finance book?
Yeah, so I read, I've been reading a lot lately, so I do a lot of reading. So obviously all the ones that people talk about. So Morgan Housel just released a book,
The
same as
Psychology of
ever.
Money.
What's same as ever? He just dropped a new one.
Oh, the same as ever.
Psychology,
Oh,
yeah, Psychology of Money's a good one. The Millionaire Next Door, and the new Millionaire Next Door, um, is or yeah, that's a good one. In terms of personal finance books, uh, Rich Dad Poor Dad is just like a basic classic on
Yeah.
um
Mhm.
just on personal finance. If you want kind of faith-based books, I think it's I'm gonna screw the title up, but it's Money, Possessions, and Eternity by Randy Alcorn is another good one, of kind of a proper perspective on money. So there's tons of books that are out there.
Thank you. You've given us so much solid information today. We really appreciate all your insights and expertise. So with that in mind, if our listeners want to know more, where can they go to learn more about you?
Yeah, so kind of like, if you want, Twitter is a good place. It's Feraud_Calixte. I think that's my Twitter handle. That you can find me there. LinkedIn is a good place to connect with me also. So that's a good way to find me. I'm not hard to find. My name is pretty unique. So if you put in Google, I'm
You're
not
coming
really that
up
hard
right
to.
away.
Yeah. So I got great ranking on the Google pages. Yeah.
I'm going to spell it out for our listeners. So if you want to go to Twitter or LinkedIn, you know exactly where to go. FeraudCalixte. And
Yep.
when I see that name, I just think of a great LSU football player that like from the New Orleans area. I don't know why. It's I'm from Ohio, and the first the Louisiana names that I saw were from LSU.
Well, it's funny that you say that. So I lived in Baton Rouge for a few years. My wife is a LSU alum, Go Tigers. We got married in New Orleans, so Louisiana, we got a lot of roots. Louisiana holds a special place for us. I went to law school in Louisiana in Baton Rouge, so Louisiana is a special place for us.
Well,
Yeah.
we were
Let's
happy.
cause some controversy, Brian.
I know where you're going with this.
Feraud,
Yeah.
best po' boys in New Orleans. There's only one correct answer. What are you saying?
Oh man, dude, I'm not even gonna get on there because it's been years since I've been. I just know my best po' boy is a shrimp po' boy.
Yeah.
That's what I like. So
Yes,
I
please.
can't go wrong.
yeah.
Yes, please. You were about to lose hundreds of thousands of followers on Twitter.
Well, I know that's why I know.
You professionally dodged it. Nicely
Yeah,
done.
there you go.
Well, we appreciate you returning the favor after we decided at Ohio State to bless LSU with Joe Burrow.
There you go.
Yeah, he wasn't in the transfer portal or anything.
Yeah.
What we like to conclude our podcast with just one simple and actionable piece of advice that really encapsulates today's discussion. What would it be?
Yeah, so because this is, we're talking about specifically for married couples, one of the things like, you know, planning money, finances is something that can cause a lot of anxiety. There's studies that show that one of the biggest things with married couples and one of the leading causes of divorce is finances. I think that it's not the only cause, but one of the causes. So I always tell people, look, one of my personal taglines is like your net worth is not your self-worth. Money is important. It's a tool, but it should not be the ultimate thing, right? And as a couple, we can work together and solve a lot of these issues. There's a lot of resources out here to assist, a lot of professionals who are more than willing to really help you and meet you where you are in terms of your financial story, and hopefully that's you can find the resources to continue strengthening your family and accomplishing the goals that are important for you.
Really appreciate your time today. Look forward to sharing the links to what you shared on today's podcast so people know where to turn. Once again, thanks for taking the time out of your day to meet with us.
Awesome. Happy to do it.
A special thanks to our guest and, of course, to all of our listeners. Don't forget to click subscribe wherever you download your podcast, give us a rating, and share the Modern Husbands podcast with others. Doing so goes a long way in growing our reach. And join your fellow modern husbands and have links to our podcasts, articles, and other resources to manage money in the home as a team sent to your inbox every 2 weeks by subscribing to our newsletter at modernhusbands.com. Until next time, be well.